welcome to episode 207 of Beyond the Trailer Park, where we're going to talk about some strange UFO alien religions. And, well, we are down Bridget tonight, but we have Miss Sam back, and we have Morgan again. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Doing well.
Oh, Sammy, you can say more than shake your head.
Aliens. What?
uh, leave it to you. Okay, let me get on my right screen here. So, yeah, we had a few little glitches there. I forgot to go live the first time. So, they got to hear the theme song. Sorry. So, how are you ladies?
I'm good. I am broadcasting now from Charlotte, North Carolina. So that is my new home.
Are you all moved in?
I am. I am moved in. I am renting out my house. So, to some new staff over at Ole Miss. So that's going well. And
Excellent.
yeah, I'm just up
Wow.
here in Charlotte.
You're not actually that far from me now.
Yeah, a little
Good.
That's
bit.
kind of cool. That's kind of
A
cool.
little
That's
closer.
kind of
I'm
cool.
creeping my way further north.
Yeah,
That's
Slowly.
fun.
she's not 19 hours away. She's only 13.
Yeah.
It's about half day of drive. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But and Miss Sam, how are you, my dear?
Wow. Oh gosh, it's been a week. It's been
Yeah.
a week. Yeah.
So, but yeah, for those that aren't aware, it was a sad anniversary. It's actually, believe it or not, been a year that we lost Deb. So I know Sammy's been having a hard time with it. I know I have, and I'm pretty sure Morgan has. And
Yeah.
from some of the postings I've seen from mutual friends, I think we all have. I think we're all still really in shock because nobody expected it. So, but so you guys are doing well then.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Because I know for a while things were a little rough for you, so it sounds good to hear it in your voice because your voice has changed. You have a much more perkiness to your voice, and Samuel always had perkiness to your voice. So, but I know you've been working some bullshit hours, so
I have to sound perky. It's
no, you don't.
otherwise I just sound like the Davy dog, and I just can't do that. Don't you know? I just.
Yeah.
eh.
But yeah, Bridget isn't feeling well tonight, so we'll send our tots and pears that she feels better.
Pairs of tots.
Yeah,
So send
pairs of tots.
two children in pairs of twos. Send them.
Preferably,
It's like some Noah's Ark thing.
yeah, thank you. I was like,
Elephants,
what was I gonna say? It was something with Noah's Ark, but oh well. It probably wouldn't have
pairs.
made much sense anyways, because for some reason I was fine up until about an hour ago, and then I'm like, I'm tired. But it's Monday, so it's typical for me. But I feel better now, so yeah, this we're gonna talk about UFO alien religions. And before we delve into it, and you guys chime in as well, is like I believe alien life is possible. Okay, I don't think aliens visiting our planet is probable. Um, I think it would be very Earth centric of me to think that our planet, with all the life on it and all the diversity, is the only one to evolve in the universe, let alone just our galaxy. But with our current science and our current technology, I don't even think we'd be able to determine if another life form has ever been present on our planet. Yeah, the speculation is kind of fun, but with not just the group we're going to talk to about tonight, the UFO group, and they're out of Thailand, so the names I'm gonna kind of shorten them because yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to say that one. I was like, oh, I don't want to slaughter their names, so I'm gonna kind of come up with nicknames as we go. But yeah, to think, even just to think that any alien life, if it were to exist, would even be anything remotely like ours, like carbon based, is really short sighted in my opinion. I mean, who's to say that there isn't some amoeba like thing out there, or to borrow from Star Trek, a Horta, that isn't ruling a distant galaxy or planet? I mean, we can't just assume, and when I say we, I mean us as laymen, not as scientists.
Hmm.
I mean, it would be very, as I said, Earth-centric to believe that everybody or everything is going to look even remotely similar to what we do. Have two arms, two legs, and head. I mean, as I said, they could be a Horta. I mean, in Star Trek, they didn't know the Hortas were alive until Spock did a mind meld. So, yeah, what we as laymen understand, I don't think really transfers over to belief or non-belief in aliens and UFOs. But with that said, I can't completely discount what this group has experienced. Do I think they're crazy? Not necessarily crazy in a delusional sense, but I would need more evidence than just grainy photographs, which is primarily what they have. There's nothing, at least to my eyes, that it would be definitive to prove that alien life is present on this planet in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of the graphics that they do show, and they do have a Facebook page, um, look like Hollywoodized grays, which is a form
Hmm.
of an alien. So it would take a lot more than that to convince me. But I'm not saying it's not possible. So, but and their means of communication is primarily meditation. And one who does meditate, and I still do, and I have since I was 17. So we're going on 38, yeah, 38 years. Um, I know how easy it is when you free your mind. You can get some really loopy things going through your head. And some of them can be very disconcerting. So, you know, just think of the hubbub surrounding transcendental meditation, and also some responses to the teaching of mindfulness being taught in our public schools. So, yeah, I can see where some of the concern may lie with some people. So it's, you know, but that's beyond what I think what we want to hit on tonight. What are you guys' thoughts? What do you think about alien life, Morgan?
Well, for me, it's like, you hear about, and actually it's funny because just last week I was talking with somebody about an incident in Mississippi where there was these people claimed to have basically been abducted by aliens over in Pascagoula, Mississippi, which is on the coast, in 1971. Um, and there's, these things that come up like that. And so the thing is, I don't think that, obviously I do think some people are lying, or maybe they do have some kind of mental illness or something like that. But I think that they believe something happened, because otherwise it's like, well, why would you make this up and be known as the local crazy, especially in, like, Pascagoula, which, I mean, is still a little bit backwater, but, especially in the early 70s, you would just be known as, like, the crazy dude. So I do think that people who claim to have had experiences with aliens, they believe something happened. Now, whether that's an actual alien that came, and visited Earth, or if it's some kind of, like, if there's transdimensional, weird stuff there, or if it's a purely psychological phenomenon, then I can't say. But I mean, I think that there's definitely nuttier things to believe, and we do know that there were things like Project Blue Book out there. There are people who do study this, and I was actually reading a interesting article about sort of this, they call themselves this invisible college, and it's sort of this group of scientists, but they don't really publish basically what they what their findings are, or they don't like broadcast them to the public because they end up getting, these people that are super into aliens, trying to contact them and things like that, and they're trying to do serious research, and they don't want to be known in the scientific community as, oh, that's the alien guy,
Mm-hmm.
when they're just studying this kind of phenomenon. So I do think that there is, it's worth studying for sure, these phenomenons, and whether people have what these abduction experiences are about, or these photographs and things like that, because there are people in the Navy who have claimed, to have
Mm-hmm.
seen some weird shit, in the
Well,
sky. And
I know one of the gentlemen we're going to meet tonight. I won't say he's a founder, but he's one of the original members. He's a former Harvard trained heart surgeon.
yeah,
So I mean, and even there's a quote from Michael Shermer that I think it was Michael Shermer. That I'll read a little bit later. And basically he says the same thing. These are just normal people. So.
yeah, it's not like, they're not like, I was talking before the show earlier with Beth about Heaven's Gate, and
Mm-hmm.
that whole thing, and how these, UFO centric religions can go very badly.
Mm-hmm.
And, often they do. I mean, another UFO centric religion would be, Scientology. Now, like I said, I think Scientology wouldn't, go necessarily in that suicidal direction, because then they couldn't bilk their members for money anymore. And that's, as we know, but kind of a purpose of Scientology. But as we do see where these sects will split off, and they'll become more extreme, and we'll see very tragic things happen from that. So I can see where this kind of belief in UFOs and that kind of thing can go too far. And also, I was talking with Beth earlier about Project Camelot and that kind of stuff. If you're unfamiliar, there's this woman who, I guess she's just independently wealthy, and she's the least credulous woman I've ever seen. She will believe literally anything anybody tells her. Like, I could probably get on her show by being like, oh, this, and that. And there's this sort of avoiding of personal responsibility by this worldview where aliens are secretly in control of everything, and then you get into the lizard people, and it ties over into that, and it can get into some very problematic ancient aliens views and views on reptilians with that tie into racism and anti-Semitism. So, and it's a way of being like, oh no, it's not actual humans that are doing, that are responsible for wars and responsible for bad leadership. It's these aliens, So you can get into a lot of problematic things with these beliefs, but I think for the most part, like you said, I mean, I think there might be something to it, and it's worth exploring and worth thinking about.
Sam, what's your thoughts as we begin?
Um, they've found so many distant planets already that, like, look nice. We can never get to them in our lifetime, but oh, they're like, in Star Trek, they're an M-class planet. They look all right. Like, we know of these things that sort of exist way, 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 way far away, and we're just like little fledgling baby birds with space knowledge right now. We're learning more all the time, but we're still just so much less than we know than what we already have. But if you look at history, and you look at just our own culture for a moment, and our own world for a moment, whenever explorers, settlers, colonizers were going around looking and exploring at other nations and other places, if there was no strategic value to conquering a place, they wouldn't bother going. Like, they would just leave it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't need to take this frozen island in Greenland for another 400 years. There's nothing here. Like, we can just leave it. It's cool. Like, and this would happen all the time, where they
Mm-hmm.
would just say no value. Let's go. So, like, mathematically, there's no way we can be the only things out there by any means. Just, it's mathematically impossible. But there's no reason for anything to want to ever come here. Is the thing. Like, there's just no, like, all these sci-fi movies like Independence Day, oh, they're gonna conquer us. Why?
Well,
We've given our planet cancer. Like, we gave our planet cancer. Nobody wants Earth anymore. It's a shithole.
well,
Like,
one of the articles I read leading up to tonight was they kept referring to Stephen Hawking, um, the former physicist who passed away not too long ago,
Yep.
and he was terrified of aliens. And
Yep.
his view, now I don't know how accurate this portrayal of his view is, I didn't delve too deep, but basically he felt that if there were aliens, it would be like Independence Day, and because he was terrified of being conquered by these aliens, he didn't think anything good could come of it. So, it's not an unusual belief, and that's coming from a guy like Stephen Hawking, who was, at the time was probably one of the smartest men on the face of the planet, in my opinion. But it's just, yeah, it opens up the possibilities of why, and all I can think of, you know, being who I am and based on our world history is, basically what happened with after, Columbus discovered America and, the wiping out of the Inca and Nazca civilizations. I mean, all for fucking gold, gold and silver. So, yeah, like you said, I mean, really, if you think about it, if you look at it, if these, as some groups claim, oh, these alien beings are, all nice and are trying to save us from ourselves, it's like, why the fuck would they even bother? All we do is destroy everything we put our hands on. So, but yeah, as I was telling Morgan before we started, I said, I don't believe this group particularly is overtly malevolent. There doesn't seem to be any funky anti-Semitism or racism or all that garbage that goes along with some of the groups. I don't think that's the case with this group. I just think they experience something and they believe they are getting these messages and they're trying to forewarn the people. And one thing I noticed is I became aware of this group last August. And the full name of the group is UFO-Kela, or that's what I call it, well, what they're referred to, but the full group name is Kela Coordination for Disasters Warning Group. That's kind of a mouthful, so it's just going to be UFO-Kela, if I can spit that out. And as I said, I became aware of them in August of last year. And then in October, Vice did an article called Meet the Thai UFO Group Convinced That Aliens Will Save Us from Armageddon. Now, since that time, between when I was aware of them and just after Vice put out their article, a lot of information that was online, such as their videos, their website, or you know, websites associated with members of the group, kind of went dark. Now, whether that was coincidence and they conglomerated and put everything on Facebook, because they do have a Facebook group and a Facebook page. They're both in Thai, and so you do have the translate option, but it makes reading anything of any great length a little difficult. But everything kind of went dark. So I don't know if that's coincidence or they weren't happy with the Vice article, even though they participated in it and were interviewed. I'm not really sure. So I thought before we got too far into this, might help to explain what an alien or a UFO based religion is. And to put it simply, groups that are based on alien belief or UFO belief believe that humanity will be saved by aliens when humans are educated as to a better way of life. Some of the groups believe that aliens will come to take those that believe to a more positive location. Um, Oftentimes, these ETs are seen to plead with humanity to improve itself and to move away from a society of greed and violence. Um, the ETs or the UFO religions place an emphasis on spiritual growth and the evolution of humanity. many of these groups, and there's actually quite a few. There's about 25 to 30 of them. I think about 25 that are actually active. Some are defunct. A lot of them have basis in Christianity primarily, but also some are Islamic, which I thought kind of interesting, just because you don't really hear of. In fact, I was surprised about this group in general because they're out of Thailand, but we'll hit that point in a minute. So usually the groups are formed after a believer or after an individual claims to have had some type of experience, whether it be an abduction or taken onto an air spacecraft and shown things. Raelianism is one of the ones that it was after Rael was taken aboard a spacecraft and shown all these things that Raelianism came about. And I'll say, I mean, I might refer to Raelianism a couple times, but we're really not going to delve into them because I think we're going to do a whole episode on them shortly. So it's like, I don't want to be repeating myself too much. So then one of the last things with UFO religions, there's a belief that the quote supreme being or the evolved entity did not ascend from Earth, but instead came from another planet or came from another plane, and they descended to Earth. So you can see the ancient alien mythos in there a little bit. Um, as I said, I was really surprised this group was out of Thailand. Is generally the UFO alien phenomenon, the religions, etc., are kind of a Western thing, and they started generally after the 1947 Roswell incident in New Mexico. But I was actually surprised that they're Southeast Asia, Malaysia, India,
Hmm.
Pakistan, Iran and Iraq, Japan, China. They have all had some type of UFO sightings, reported. I really thought it was a U.S., Canada, Europe, thing. I didn't really realize it reached that far into the Asian countries and into the Far East. So I learned something new. Um, basically, Keokala fits this general description. The only difference is they don't believe that they're going to be taken away to a special place, but they feel that these aliens are going to help us survive World War III, which they predict in 2025, if I remember correctly, without looking at my notes, and that the aliens are going to help us rebuild after a nuclear apocalypse.
Well, they might be right.
Yeah, I was reading that part and
I
I
was
was
thinking
like,
it was going to be, yeah, when I read that, I was like, maybe a
oh.
little bit sooner.
And the thing, the fun, well, funny not, ha ha, but odd is that they said it's going to be between the U.S. and China, and they predicted that long before the current political climate that's going on. So yeah, it's like okay, but
Now, the thing that does worry me with that kind of language though is, you do get these people who, I mean, examples right now, I mean, look who's running the United States foreign policy and, I mean, right now I think that's the only real extreme that I know that I am aware of, where there's these evangelicals who believe that, there needs to be these wars in the Middle East so that Jesus can come back and,
yes,
all that
self
prophecy can
fulfill,
be
yeah,
fulfilled.
self
Yeah, and
fulfilling,
so they're making these, yeah, it's this self-fulfilling thing where they're making these policy decisions and things where, that's kind of the end goal.
yes,
um and so that to me is where, when you have these prophecies and things, that's what gets concerning to me, especially about war, because it's like, well, are you going to try and, like, do you believe that you have some place in, accelerating that, or trying to cause that, so that's where it does get concerning with me when you have these kind of prophecies that you're
yeah.
trying, especially these apocalyptic
I
ones.
second that notion because it's like, I mean, they've actually, in fact, I think someone just did yesterday. basically, has said that we are trying to cause, for lack of a better word, the second coming of Christ. And going back to the recent assassination, um, the evangelicals are basically, oh yeah, they're all for it because they know
Yeah,
it's
which
going to, and that's really, 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 and Mike Pence is one of the worst ones. He's like, oh yeah, that was the right thing to do, and then you have, um,
Yeah, which I know that there's different reasons, not necessarily why that reaction would be, not necessarily because of this, hardcore evangelical, belief that, because some people do believe like, oh, it's prophecy, it's going to happen, regardless of what I do. But there are some that I do feel seek these positions, and I've seen, Secretary Pompeo being, an example. Of somebody who does seem to be making these decisions in the Middle East of these intervention with these ideas
yes,
at his forefront, and that's very scary to me and very concerning to me. When I mean, it's one thing if a local preacher, somewhere in like Wisconsin believes that. It's another thing when your Secretary of State does.
well,
So that's kind of how I separate it. But at the same time, I'm very concerned whenever anybody has these kind of apocalyptic prophecies, and then especially if they're like, oh, and I can help it come true. I have a place in
yes,
this. That's
yes.
God's purpose for my life. Like,
I
ugh,
think it's
no.
I
I
think
like
it's
being alive.
I think it's very telling when you have somebody like Rick Wiles, who is an outright anti-Semite, self-professed, does not hide the fact, and he gets press credentials for the White House.
Yeah, that's, and I think and part of that is, it's fairly, because I don't know if you recall, but very early in the Trump administration, I actually forgotten this, but I've been going back listening to podcasts from 2017, and it's crazy how much I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. But yeah, InfoWars got press credentialed
Yes.
for like a week or so, and it's
Mhm.
fairly easy to do that, but the fact that it's happening is still very telling. And part of it is this, oh, it's going to trigger the libs type mentality. But yeah, that's
Yes.
still very concerning when you have your official government being like, yeah, we're going to give them press credentials because while at the same time it's kind of like meaningless. In a way, it's not, because it's like the government basically being like, yeah, we see this as a legitimate news source, or we see this person as a legitimate, yeah, like person that's going out telling the truth. Yeah, it's crazy that Rick Wiles got them. Like, my
Uh,
God.
Sam, you were gonna say something, or am I hearing things?
It was on the
The
tip of my it
aliens.
was on the tip of my tongue, and then I oh Christ, no, there, yeah. Just speaking of odd fucking people getting allowed into the White House, I saw this terrible, terrible, terrible interview. Like, not that any other interviews are any better with him, but I saw this terrible interview with Kanye West
Oh,
where he's being interviewed by another black person, and he just outright says that he feels that, like, this is his words, not mine,
mm-hmm.
but like he feels that the black people let themselves be enslaved for all those hundreds of years in America.
Yeah.
Oh
and
yeah,
and,
that
and
kind.
the other guy, like the other interviewer, like stops the interview, gets up and like bitches him out and leaves, like literally leaves in the middle of it, and then like a week later Trump invites him to the White House.
Yeah, there are. Let's see how to put this gently without sounding atrocious, but it's gonna sound atrocious no matter how. There are a few African American people who believe they are more white than they are black, and they act that way. And it's like they make statements such as that. I'm trying to think of. I don't want to say the wrong person, so. But there is another gentleman that's like that that also is a.
Or Candace Owens.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's the worst. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, the worst. But I mean, I don't know how much of it is this is her sincere beliefs, or if she,
Exactly.
knows that she's going to get like a dump truck of money by scamming all these white people. Which, if that's the case, I kind of, uh. I can't be too mad at that, but it's problematic.
I think you made a really good point. How much of it is an act, and how much of it
Well,
is
yeah, but
really
I don't know
true.
how much of it is, and
Right. Well, it's just
that's
like with
always a
Alex
complication.
Jones. It's like with
Yeah.
Alex Jones. How I mean, I have one of my more reliable commentaries who says that it's all an act with Alex Jones. That's not how he believes, and really likes the dude. And I'm thinking, okay,
Yeah, I'm actually right now listening to a purely they cover the InfoWars world and Alex Jones. Like that's all they do, and I'm listening to this back from 2017. That's why I brought the InfoWars press credentials. And yeah, I think it is a bit more complicated than it's all just an act.
yeah,
But just based off of the content and the way these people are covering it, podcast is called Knowledge Fight. Because it's play on
okay.
Infowars, but Knowledge Fight.
I'll have to
But
keep that. Try to remember that one.
yeah, I'll probably bring it up later, but I'm sure in other shows just because it's very fascinating, especially when you get into these, right wing and evangelical and these very weird Christian narratives, like
Yeah,
very like esoteric Christianity,
yeah,
which is I find fascinating.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, which kind of goes into the UFOs thing. Now, mentioning the definition of UFO religions and that type of thing, would Mormonism be considered a UFO religion? Because don't they, because I know
Well,
that they believe they get their own planet after they die,
It
but
all
well,
depends on which
I,
branch of Mormonism, because some of them are
some
less
do.
about
Yeah,
that.
I was doing. I actually put
some
that.
are less into the planets in space.
Well,
Well,
Bright Blankenagel can explain it way better than me. Me and him had a chat about it one time. It it all depends on which branch of Mormonism, because just like every other cult, they try to pretend like, oh, we're the one true denomination.
Yeah,
No, there's like a bunch of different split offs of them.
yeah,
So it all depends on. I can't remember if you're a Brigham fan, Brigham Young, or one of the other ones. There, like it depends on where you
okay,
were raised with
well,
it and all this other lovely shit. So
I think it's funny you brought that up because the last little section I was working on before getting ready for the show today was about Mormonism and whether to include them or not. And
there you go. There you go.
my initial belief up to
or any
like
religion, because angels technically don't people believe they come from
yeah,
another
well,
plane? Like, isn't
that
that a type of UFO?
well, we'll hit that in a minute. But going to the Mormonism, because I really wasn't going to delve too deep, so taking it out of order isn't going to make a difference. But a lot of critics consider them a UFO alien cult. But like Sammy said, there are differences among the
Yeah.
different sects within Mormonism, and I'm more inclined now to say that they're not. Now,
Yeah, I'm more inclined on that too. I just wonder,
because
I view the argument could be made.
yeah,
Whether that's a sound or plausible argument, I don't
well,
know, but
the whole Kolob, which is the star or planet, depending on how you want to define it, um, was given to the star closest to the throne of God. And this is from the book of Abraham 3:3, which is part of their sacred text. And it was introduced, and this is how it was explained to me, introduced as an effort to teach Abraham that there is a hierarchy in all things. Thus, Kolob is introduced in a rather peripheral way in order to teach about the supremacy of God. But according to some believers of Mormonism, Kolob does not play a real role in LDS
okay.
doctrine or discourse. And many of the proponents of Mormonism that don't believe in Kolob or the whole alien thing, it was an effort to make the church look really bizarre. As many critics mock the idea of God living on a planet Kolob. So yeah, I think like Sam said, I think we would have to bring Bryce on to get a.
Yeah.
And I know we broached this once before. Well, not the last time he was on, but the time before. So you're talking a good 2 years.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah.
um, yeah. So I don't know. I personally now, after reading what I did today and talking to a friend who is a Mormon, they were like, we really, I mean, yeah, we believe in cola, but not in the way y'all make it out the same. So, you know, I would,
Yeah.
I would say
Yeah, it's
no.
clearly different from this group in Thailand. I was just
Yeah,
wondering where, like, that Venn diagram, between
yeah,
the two kind of overlaps and where it doesn't.
yeah.
If that
I,
makes
I, I
sense.
think a lot of it, I think, you know, from what I, especially what I read today, that it's more of a just people trying to make Mormonism look to be crazier than it might already be. And I mean, I I know enough about Mormonism to stick my foot in my mouth and make myself look like an asshole. So
Well, it seems almost like a difference between so Kolob seems almost like a version of heaven, so to speak. Like there's no
Mhm.
vehicle we could take physically in our forms right now to get there. Whereas Thai Alien Group, they believe aliens on Pluto are talking with them. So
Yeah.
like if we had an Enterprise, we could technically go to Pluto and see these aliens right now.
yeah,
Like so that I
Yeah.
think the bit of a difference there is like one we can they physically think these things actually are
hmm
here in the
yeah.
same way. Yeah.
Well, and what struck me when I was in information gathering, and it, as y'all know, I'm pretty into the Nephilim mythos and the ancient alien bullshit. Not by choice, it kind of just fell in my lap like 10 years ago. But I still tinker with it and I still kind of watch because, you know, it gets into the whole racism thing, which I find quite distasteful, obviously. But one of the things I notice with, like, in general with UFO alien groups is that you have a group like Keokela who believe the ETs are benevolent and want to help humanity. They want to save humans from World War III and the apocalypse. On the other hand, we have those that believe that ETs are malevolent. Some go so far as to state that they are of Satan or they are demonic forces of some type. Um, I do have some
Yeah,
links.
that would be my upbringing, like the Pentecostal
Well,
upbringing. It would be
yeah,
like, oh, these guys are all Satan. It's all Satan because it's not us. Like that
yeah.
would be them for sure.
And then, as I was telling Morgan before the show, then we have people that combine the Nephilim mythos with ancient aliens and come up with a really screwy idea. And one of the people I'm most familiar with, because I interviewed him, and I regret ever doing that, but is Scotty Roberts. And he wrote a book called The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, the untold story of fallen angels, giants on the earth, and their extraterrestrial origins.
I
Now,
did not realize you interviewed him.
yes, twice. Yeah.
We got to talk more. Geez, I tell ya.
Yeah, I have his book somewhere in my mess back there.
Bet it's a good read. I bet it's a good read.
mm, kind of, sorta. Knowing what I know now, I'd say no, but
Fair enough.
um,
Fair enough.
Roberts basically, and I was years ago acquainted with him. I don't keep in contact with him. In fact, I don't even follow him anymore. But the view that he advocated for was the belief that the Nephilim from Genesis 6:4, the giants, or fallen angels from the Book of Enoch, um, are in fact extraterrestrial. Um, what's really interesting about with Scotty is that he actually did a debate with PZ Myers, whether you love or hate him. Um, and PZ wrote a blog post back in 2012 with his reaction to the debate. And I'll throw the links to any articles I reference that I think you might find interesting. But yeah, PZ's take was quite interesting. And as I was telling Morgan, I became very, very concerned with Scotty's viewpoint. And we'll maybe touch on a little bit later, but the whole ancient alien hypothesis, not as proposed by Zechariah Stitchen initially, but now warped. Even Von Doniken was before Stitchen, but by the show Ancient Aliens, David Childress, Scotty, and a bunch of John Hancock. Uh, I'm missing a name, but that group, they're very racist in their views. And basically, it boils down to that those people are too brown and too stupid to do this. It must have been aliens. So that's the problem I have with it. Now I've said it before, but we
It
might.
is toxic though. Yeah, it leaks
It,
over everywhere into it. It is toxic.
and
Yeah.
I will admit,
Yeah, it all goes back to like racism and anti-Semitism, and
yeah,
it's God, it's
Uh,
so weird how many of the like conspiracies and stuff
yeah.
like
Well,
always end up like when you look into the origins, it's like, oh, oops.
yeah. Well,
Flat Earth, same thing. Yep.
and a lot of your ancient alien religions and cults are actually based within Christianity in some level. Obviously, they've branched off and have their own ideologies, but the core belief started with Christianity. Like using Heaven's Gate as an example, Applewhite was, I believe his father, or was I think his father was a minister. I know he was active in
Yes,
church ministry.
Presbyterian minister.
Yeah, and he was active in church ministry himself as a choral director, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
But so not all of them, like this KOKL group, um, are actually based within Buddhism, and this is why it seems kind of odd to me. But the more research I did, basically within Buddhism, they do have a bit where, depending on which sect you are, that alien life or alien life forms aren't that unusual. And
Yeah, now I did see that there are some critics of this group, though, Buddhist critics, because they believe that by them tying it to Buddhism, they're making Buddhism look bad
crazy.
and crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, every group's gonna have their
Yeah. I didn't even think
pros
of
and
that.
cons. And what I find fascinating as, excuse me, these ETs, not specifically KOKL is, but the ETs, in general, from all these different groups, come from all sorts of location. We have Mars, we have Venus, we have the Pleiadians, we have Pluto, we have Xeno. If you want to go with Mormonism is crazy, then you have Kolob. Except, I mean, there is no consistency to the origin or to their beliefs. I mean, it's as
Hmm.
diverse, bad as it sounds, it's diverse as religion. I mean, you would think if there was a God, there would be one religion. No, we have over 10,000. So, and this brings me to what Michael Shermer said in one of the articles, and he goes, UFO believers are perfectly normal, albeit many have very vivid imaginations in our fantasy realm. The cause of their belief is that the brain abhors a vacuum of explanation, and short of a good explanation, most people will glom onto any explanation or any explanation. I'm not sure what that's supposed to say. I guess I should have proofread it. It says onto any explanation on offer, which is popular in culture. So yeah, that was from an Asian newspaper. So something may have got lost in translation. So basically, it's we are pattern seeking, and our you know just like pareidolia, we
Hmm.
look for patterns, or staring up at the clouds and seeing a bunny rabbit going hopping by. Oh no, that's a horse. So yeah, so we seek out patterns. It's normal. And those with more active imaginations will glom onto something like aliens or alien beings, because as Shermer says, we don't like having a vacuum in our knowledge. So like instead of God of the gaps, we have aliens of the gap. That's how I like to think of it.
Yeah, and also, the vastness of space is something, that's kind of a hard concept to wrap your mind around. So, of course, people are going to glom onto that and be like, well, what if there are societies like ours? And, of course, they're going to model these societies after maybe their ideal society, these advanced type 1 civilizations. Um, to model after, or sometimes if you get into the more bad side, we're like, yeah, there's warring factions and all war and bad things could be blamed on wars between aliens, not people. So yeah, and this group, it seems to be. I didn't get the implication from them that the aliens are going to cause conflict,
No.
but that
Rescue.
rather they're trying to like, yeah, this kind of uh, rehabilitate society, I guess, in the aftermath, and warn society of, I guess, bad
Hmm.
things to come.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I really don't. I mean, there's a few things that throw up red flags to me, but I will readily admit that I'm a little bit sensitized to the fact that anything that mentions ancient aliens or aliens, my red flags are automatically going to go up because of my, I won't say experiences, but for lack of a better word, we'll use that, based with dealing with the issues, surrounding when I was involved in the paranormal and had to interview Scotty Roberts and a couple other people that I've interviewed that hold um, rather harsh and I find distasteful views of ancient alien. Um, yeah, so anytime I see that where, my red flags are going to go up. So as I said to you before the show, there's some things that I find a little questionable, but I really don't think. I think these are just a bunch of happy go lucky Buddhists who think or who believe that they have experienced something, they're getting these messages, and they're going to do whatever they think they have to do to save humanity.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily, I think all of the quote unquote members of the group don't necessarily hold to that ideology, because I was you're reading, I think it was an Vice article where they said that a 30-year-old graphic designer from Bangkok, she joined because she just loved science fiction and really wants to see a UFO, but she
Hmm.
said she believes in only about 50% of a group's claims.
Right.
So
I've read
another
about
one
that.
is saying, yeah, Ploy Barana Siri, age 29, another graphic designer, said that spirituality was her gateway. Um, and so they use, meditation, and they believe, and she believes that they can see people's karma, and she's been active with them for about 9 years. And then she said, at first, my mom thought it was crazy. She said, but I explained that we don't do anything bad. We're just trying to help people. So it's
Right,
like,
right.
just meditate. So she views it as just another form of meditation where she's,
Hmm.
maybe able to communicate with these beings and do that kind of thing. So,
Yeah,
um,
I think out of
yeah.
any alien religion group that I've come across, and I've come across quite a few um, over the years. I think these are the most benign.
Yeah, by far. Like, because when, I hear alien cults, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, we've kind of touched on it before. I mean, not going into depth, obviously, but Heaven's Gate, and,
Yes.
these different kind of paranormal, or, these, let's see, I'm trying to think of the other one. I think it's Temple of, I can't remember the name, Temple of
Oh,
Solaris, I want to say, something
yes,
like that.
yes.
But yeah, that one, and not necessarily with UFOs, but with these past lives, and these kind of, like, not necessarily ancient aliens, but believing that they're descended from like the Knights Templar, and this sort of like alternative history, which in a way that's what ancient aliens in a sense is.
Hmm.
And also obviously that one ended up being very problematic as well. So yeah, that's, I think, why we all get our, because I think that Heaven's Gate and that type of stuff had such a profound impact on us.
You all right, Sammy?
Yeah, apparently Skype is not being my friend this week, but it happened during another live chat I did earlier too, so I'm trying to figure out what's going wrong with it. So sorry about that.
Yeah, well, I heard, not to pick on you, I heard heavy breathing was going over quite loud. So I was like, is she okay? I didn't have my, you're
I was
fine,
like, the
Jamie.
aliens got her.
Yeah, I was like, oh dear. But yeah, the only reason I'm a little touchy is a friend of mine. What was it? Sunday. I went down to work early to check to see what I had to do, and I gave him some money to go get me cigarettes when he came back in, and he didn't show up for work. My boss happened to be working, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, did he fucking forget my cigarettes? And I'm like, I was talking to another coworker, and I was like, where the fuck is Joe. I'm just using a name I don't want to. And he's like, in the hospital with a heart attack. And I'm like, oh fuck. Here I am bitching about my cigarettes, and my friend's in the hospital and possibly had a heart attack. So yeah, I'm a little.
Oh.
It's like yeah, and I should have realized because he didn't look great when I saw him. He looked overly tired. He's a few years older than I. He's in his. God, I think he's almost 70 now. But yeah, so I was like, I best pay more attention to it. It's like, yeah, so that's why I was wondering if you were okay.
Oh yeah, sweetie. No, I'm just fine.
I don't want nobody dropping dead on me anymore. This is getting ridiculous.
You gotta remember, I just did an 8-hour shift too, lovely. So.
That's true too. So, uh, but yeah. So yeah, it's been an interesting week besides work. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much we'll get into the other groups like the Raelians or Heaven Gate or Scientology. It depends on time, but wow, the diversity of views are really, really immense. The ramifications, which is something that Morgan touched on, is even greater. And one of the articles I read talked about what they call the religious mind. And while traditional, religion may be declining, I mean, in fact, I think there was just another
Hmm.
report out yesterday saying Christianity is declining. And one of the rebuttals was, yeah, well, Christianity might be declining, but that doesn't mean atheism is going up. No, that's not what we're saying. But secularism may be rising, but you know, so having a non-traditional belief when it comes to existential questions of where did we come from, or our quote so-called search for meaning, which is whatever you give it, it all deals with this concept of religious mind. And what the article said is when people are searching for meaning, their minds seem to gravitate towards thoughts of things like aliens that do not fall within our current scientific inventory of the world. Why? I suspect part of the answer is that such ideas imply that humans are not alone in the universe, that we might be part of a larger cosmic drama. As with traditional religious beliefs, many of these paranormal beliefs involve powerful beings watching over humans and the hope that they will rescue us from death and extinction. And that kind of goes along with what Michael Shermer was saying. It's basically Alien of the Gap. Yes, no,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah, and with this group, I mean, yeah, they are having, conflicts, with local law enforcement, but to my knowledge, it does seem to be not necessarily because they think the group is weird, but because they are going up onto the Calcala Mountains, and it's a protected area. Like it's basically rainforest, and it's a protected site by the forestry department there in Thailand. And so they're setting up these kind of like these makeshift buildings. They're legally camping there, building bathrooms and things like that. And so that's why that I think they fined them about $5,000, 5,000 American dollars, and have told them that they would, basically be charged if they kept doing this. But to my knowledge, they have not tried to camp out on that mountain since the raid. But part of their belief was that there was some kind of portal there where they would either be able to communicate with the UFOs or, be able to spot UFOs essentially coming through that portal. But to me, it doesn't seem to be like, oh, we think this group's weird, so we're going to, basically bother them.
Right.
It's that they're on, protected land
Yeah.
essentially.
Well, I do know within Buddhist culture, and I believe Thailand would fall into this, is that
Yeah.
most of the governments of these predominantly Buddhist countries are fairly strict about those that wander from quote mainstream Buddhism. So,
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
is part of it.
it, excuse me, it's possible, but I have a tendency to agree with you. So far, everything that I've read, and as I said in the beginning, it really all goes back to the Vice article, and also CNN put an article out. that they were encroaching on protected lands. Had nothing to do so much with their religion. One, there's only about 50 hardcore believers, although there's about 2,000, 3,000 online.
Hmm. Yeah, but that could be more like, oh, curiosity about the group, or
Well,
and
one of
people.
those 2,000 is me.
Yeah. Yeah, people who are curious about the group and it's just like, what's this about? Or people who, maybe they have an interest in UFOs but don't necessarily,
Right.
go into the, oh, I think that people are communicating with me through meditation and these, beings are on Pluto. But yeah, so they and then from based off what this Vice article said, the reporter it did say another accusation other than oh, you're making these weird claims about aliens and you're insulting Buddhism, and then these issues with law enforcement with them being on protected land. Other people are saying, oh well, they're taking donations to fund structures, but the leader pointed out it's like you said, you just like the page basically. It's they're not asking for membership dues, and even the
No.
leader said it's free to be a member. And the reporter said, yeah, there's little evidence of decadence among the group leaders I met. They
Yeah.
seem to be just average people. They're not like, it's not like an L. Ron Hubbard situation going on. So
Well,
you know uh,
and the thing is, it's like, as I said, I have liked both their pages that they have on Facebook, and it's like I jokingly say to people, if anybody ever looked at my Facebook likes, they'd be like, "What the fuck is this woman into?" Because I go all the way from these fringy paranormal type groups, all right up to I have death metal pages that I like, and I mean everything in between. If they looked at like some of my my friends, I have my friends list hidden, but I mean I have members of the Church of Satan. I have members of the Temple of Satan. I'm friends with I mean online friends with Peter Gilmore of the Church of Satan. I have three friends that are reverends within the Church of Satan. I have friends that are Mormon. I mean, they're all over the place. I have Catholic priests on my friends list. I mean, I probably have at least one minister in probably about 300 different denominations. It's like, yeah, what is she into?
What's what happens when you like shit by mistake? Like I was trying to learn about incels for a little bit, so I ended up accidentally
Oh,
liking a men's rights page,
oh no.
and then I got the worst feed. Everyone was like, "Sam, really?" I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's trying to educate. It's just,
Yeah, that's
oh,
why I have an alternative account. Well, a
I'm
couple.
learning this. Got this now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Live
like,
and learn.
I better not do that on my primary account because I don't really hide anything. I mean, other than my friends list, because I don't want my friends getting hit by the trolls I deal with
Yeah.
when I do the within the alt med, and it's like because I actually had one call my work from Australia.
Really?
Yes, so yeah. They tried to get me fired from work, and my boss was like, "Yeah, I know exactly what she does, and I agree with her." So yeah, I don't want my friends getting hassled by that shit. So I created a couple alternative accounts for when I do trolling, not to cause trouble. I don't usually comment, so it's yeah. But yeah, these guys, as I say, they're pretty benevolent. But so as far as what they believe, it's really kind of hard to discern because really there's only just the articles on the web. Allegedly they have a book called Messages from Extraterrestrials. It's in Thai and also in English, but I have yet to find a copy. And what it does, it supposedly outlines their philosophy. But yeah, trying to find any definitive outside of the Vice article and CNN article, because everything kind of refers back to those two articles, it really was difficult to pinpoint exactly what they believe.
It's
um,
probably purposeful because, like,
well, I
especially probably negative press since the articles came
well
out, as
they
well as like maybe they don't all have the same congruent belief. So it's like we better not publish all this right away in case.
well I know they do have the Facebook group, and I'm wondering if they just kind of conglomerated everything into there. And as I said, it's in Thai, and because my work schedule has increased, I haven't really had time to like translate every single post. It is a little time consuming, so this is not firsthand from like their own writings or stuff. And basically, it's what I've piecemealed from various articles that I read. And I'm not trying to be deceitful. I'm not trying to be, strong in their beliefs. I mean, if you happen to listen to this and know that I'm wrong and can show me, I will make the correction. But as Morgan mentioned, the origin of the hills attractiveness to these ETs started in 1997. And I'm not going to say the full names since I don't really want to slaughter them, so we'll kind of shorten them. Basically, a retired Sergeant Major Churd, I can't pronounce his last name, was in Buddhist meditation at his home and allegedly, according to him, received mental messages from what he insisted were aliens. He then relayed this to his daughters, and his one daughter, Samjit Riapath, said that my father received the energy first and then sent that energy through me. It's similar to the way we use a cell phone. Um, she says the energy from Pluto forced her to speak a warning of the looming disaster. After that, she became a believer. So basically, what Samjit, who is actually one of the original founders of UFO-Keokela, claimed to have been communicating with aliens from Pluto and a planet named, hold on, I gotta find the pronunciation key, Lagu Kata Paka Tigong. We're going to call them Loku Kongs because that's what some of the articles referred to them, because that's a mouthful, at least for me. Um, and that's been since 1998. Then her sister, who is the actual founder along with her, Arjan Wasana, I can't say the last name, also became a believer shortly thereafter, and with uh, the two sisters then founded Keokela. And it was at the urging of the aliens that Keokela Mountain as a place to communicate with people was chosen. Now, from what I understand, it's not actually a mountain like the Rockies, but more of a hill. Um, but in lands such as Thailand, which is fairly flat
Mhm.
places, so yeah. And according to Samjit, our Earth is like a speck of dust in the galaxy. Unbelievers should open their minds. Don't be scared that we have advanced neighbors. They want to help us. She originally was a nurse, so she's, as Morgan said, just everyday people. Um, they visited us in every era. How do you think we built the pyramids? That was the first red flag for me. Um, But one of the questions I have, because I always assumed, oh, the UFO thing is a Western phenomenon, and why Thailand of all places? And this is where I discovered that it's not unusual over there to have these experiences. The first known sighting of a flying saucer in Southeast Asia was allegedly recorded in Bangkok in 1810. It was recorded by a Briton.
Oh,
Yeah, and this is what caught. I mean, I was like, why freaking Thailand?
that's
This
super
is,
early too. Like,
yeah,
because around the 50s and 60s, that's kind of when like
yeah, and they,
everybody was.
and that's the thing. Is like when I did a little bit of digging, I was like, why did they? I mean, Thailand. I mean, come on, this is like you said, the 50s and 60s, and it's like, so yeah, they have a recording.
Some Jules Verne stuff going on there.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
and this was reported by a Briton. This is not a native, from Thailand. This is, a Westerner. That he reported that a UFO occurred. There's also,
What would they even have called it back then? Because they wouldn't have had that term.
well, yeah, that I don't know what they would have called it. didn't even think to look that up. That's actually a good question. What they would have called it.
And a heavenly body, maybe. I
I
don't know.
that,
Yeah, I mean,
that
think it's something along those lines. Yeah.
yeah, but there was a report in 1948 in Indochina. There was a report in 1959 in Papua New Guinea, and also in Malaysia in the 70s and 1999, and then the Philippines had one in 1979. Now there is actually a book. It was self-published by Ahmad Jamaludin, who is a Malaysian UFO researcher, and he called this book "UFO Reports in Southeast Asia from the 1800s to 1996." So, and from what I little I read about this book and him is he's got like a boatload of these reports. So, I guess it's not just a Western phenomenon. Um, so yeah, according to one article, Thailand does have a history of UFO sightings and a lot of travel things, travel logs, blogs, whatever. It's hyped as a destination if ancient aliens is your thing. One of the quotes from one of them was, "When it comes to exploring ancient aliens in Thailand, you're in for a treat. Unexplained sightings, incredible ruins, and mysterious happenings abound. Tales of the unexpected go hand in hand with a search for ancient aliens in Thailand. You're faced with an incredible experience and a whole host of sites to explore, stories to hear, and places to visit." And some of the places they mention is Au Tathaha. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Um, these are ruins. And they say the beautiful crafted shrines and sacred temples certainly don't appear worthy of human hands, especially when you consider they were crafted over 300 years ago. Another site is Soku Hut Hai and Lap Buri. Um, so basically, the same thing. Oh, these ruins are extravagant, couldn't be done by human hands. So it's not an, I mean, surprisingly, it's not an unheard of thing over there. And it's just like, really?
Yeah, and especially so early, so it isn't just a Western phenomenon.
Yeah, from what I could dick. Oh, Jesus. Dig. Sorry. Um, one of the earliest. Oh, it doesn't give a date. Damn it! I thought I wrote the date down. There was a in the Chronicles of we'll just say the name Crystal Chakram during the reign of King Lithai of the Soku Hathan Kingdom. UFOs were identified as flying weapon
Mhm.
that helped the Thai king win in the battle, and that's according to a Wiki Zero page on UFO sightings in Thailand. I'll throw the link in there so y'all can figure out what I just tried to say. But yeah, one of the followers of this Thai group is Dr. Deb Hanam Mua Gaman, and he claimed he's the one that was educated at Harvard at medical school. He claimed that extraterrestrial contact after a gray came into his bedroom in Xi'an, Bangkok. He claims that in a previous life he was born on Mars and was named Pirati. Through his contact with aliens using telepathy and through meditation, he claims that the extraterrestrials are friendly with him and were named Eddie of the
Hmm.
Pluto people and Paracetal of the Mars people. I find the Paracetal kind of comical because isn't that the name of a medication up in Canada?
Penicillin sounds close.
Isn't there a
There might.
yeah there I know that I mean I might be pronouncing it wrong so but yeah I mean, and this guy is, Harvard educated,
Yeah, and
a heart doctor.
what's interesting too is with these UFO sightings in Southeast Asia, they're not necessarily like the grays that we think of, from TV and stuff. Because I was finding it probably was just from the same, basically the same article. And it was this doctor, but I think he was on a different publication. This is Wall Street Journal.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, and he was saying basically that, and he said though that these aliens were from Mars, but they say that in Thai culture they have very much more like they follow more Buddhist principles. There's a reincarnation in there, and then also when they appear, they'll often like have their hands cupped, kind of like a lotus flower.
Mm.
So, these kind of cultural things that they have are, ascribed to these aliens, which I find also very fascinating. But yeah, there is that theme of, oh, well, they're telling me these warnings, or they're, telling me about, things that are going to affect Thailand's future, and, things like that, which I find interesting. Not necessarily like you see, these American alien abduction ones, they vary. Sometimes they don't tell you anything, they just pick you up and probe you and throw you back down. So they're a little bit less conversational.
There was a meme I saw the other day. It was an alien parent. I don't know whether it was male or female. It didn't really imply either. Uh, Saying to a child, "You're telling me now at 9 p.m." And it was explaining why abductions happen at night. And it was saying, "You're telling me now at 9 p.m. that you need a human for class tomorrow."
Yeah, basically it's that. Yeah. And it's sometimes people will say that, the aliens will show them things, or, things like that. Obviously not all American or even all Thai, encounters with aliens are considered, have these common themes. But I do find that, you do find these similarities to different narratives that I find very fascinating. That, because looking up, different claimed UFO experiences in Southeast Asia, you get more of, oh yeah, well, it was either I saw something weird in the sky, which yeah, you do get that here, or it's if they're contacting, it's like they were telling me about things, and conversate, and sometimes in Western culture you get these, oh, they just picked me up and that was it.
Okay, you two need to talk. I gotta run to the restroom.
All right.
Back
I
to
appear to have a guest here with me.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, just it's very weird. But yeah, you get into these, and then you get into, the Project Camelot stuff, which is bonkers, absolutely bonkers. Trippin' Fool said, "Did they get the license plate to know they were Martian aliens?" So no, but I did love the quote from the doctor there. He said, "Yeah, he was from Mars, and he talked to me, and he said, 'Don't worry about the phone bill.'" And I was like, "Oh, they have a sense of humor now. Great."
Reminds me of Men in Black aliens almost.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what is he in a hacky '90s comedy? Like, what was this alien doing? But yeah, it's yeah. Trippin', thanks for joining us in chat. Good evening. Yeah, and let us know. He says that we are getting an echo, so yeah, let us know if that continues. But yeah, it's weird how there's, these people that are like, oh, well, there's different types of aliens. There's, reptiles and reptoids, which they consider to be different, and or some people do, and then you got your grays, which are like your big-headed, aliens you see on the Lisa Frank stickers, and and then you've got like they have these ones that, they think look more people-like and things like that. Now, I didn't see anything about that with this group. They seem to all think that they're kind of this more spiritual form, but
well, they work in pairs with this group here. So you've got the Pluto aliens, which are like an energy almost, is how the article describes it, and then there's their worker friends on the other planet, and they're the ones who are actually like a physical form, is what it seems to be implying here.
Which is kind of very Buddhist in the fact that, there's, you have a physical form and then you have a spiritual form.
And they're working together and
yeah, in
balance
unity.
and all this stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and here they're like, oh, they're all at war with each other and they hate one another and they're using people and yeah, Sam, this Project Camelot stuff is absolutely crazy. It also ties into the Pendragon plot, which was a plot by a man to take over San Marino County, California. It was discovered he had this plot after he was arrested for convincing two teenagers to murder somebody who owed him money.
Yeah.
And he claims that he is was a space captain in the secret space programs and what have you. So, and Carrie Callahan believes every word of it. I think that we should call into her show and just like I promise you we could make up anything and she'd be like, oh really? It's absolutely bonkers.
Ring a bell with me.
Project Camelot.
Yeah, besides Project Camelot.
The fact that she interviews convicted murderer Mark Richards, because he claims to have been a space captain. Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know where she gets her money from necessarily because I don't think she has like a normal job. Like you know what I mean? Like this is what she does and I guess people yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
One of my brain farts, I think, due to my. Some things I'll remember, like pre-stroke, and some things I don't. So that's one of those things I guess I don't. But yeah, there's a couple names I've come across. I'm like, why do I know that name? Sometimes finding out is not always fun, but anyway.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, one of the things that I discovered, like not having like primary source material for what they do or don't believe, is when you try to put it all together from an outside point of view, such as ours, is it a religion or what constitutes a religion can be in some cases difficult to define. Like using Heaven's Gate as an example, I mean, a lot of people aren't aware that buried very deeply within Heaven's Gate is Christianity. These guys are more
Yeah.
overt with their Buddhist beliefs, so they're not too hard. But is their Buddhist belief based in this alien belief? And no. Whereas Heaven's Gate got so twisted along the way before they even quote unquote founded that the alien belief was the sole central dogma of the religion, where the Christianity
Yeah.
is so far buried.
And there doesn't seem to be like a singular, a lot of these where these cults go wrong, obviously is they're formed around a singular leader that you cannot question, and that's not happening here with this kind of group because it seems that they're absolutely fine with members being like, yeah, I believe about half of what the hardcore believers believe, and they're not like, oh, you heretic, get out. You know what I mean? Like they seem to be very like, yeah, this is what we think and we're just kind of chilling and if you want to come along, great. They're not being like closed off to the press or anything like that. Like they welcomed this vice reporter to come along with them and check them out. And they even say that in the article it was much less, doomsday cult than it was more like a fun weekend camping trip, like with a bunch of, people. Just you're going to the jungle.
In, I think it was the Bangkok Post.
Mm-hmm.
The reporter went to a meeting. Can you hear me now, Trippin? Went to a meeting at a hotel, and yeah, they welcomed him with open arms too. So they don't seem to be very secretive, whereas
Yeah.
And then a second point that came to my mind, is that these, as technology advances, going back to the various narratives, as technology advances, so do these narratives. I mean, they outright say, "Oh, just like cell phones." It's like, yeah. I mean, I know in one video that I'll link to in the show notes, um, they actually showed the doctor, the one that's Harvard trained. He was actually on a cell phone, and he had, I believe, I'm not sure if it was an EMF meter or not, but he was saying, oh, according to how the little gauge was spiking, oh, they're close now. And one of Mike Heiser, who has a PhD doctorate, and he's into the whole Nephilim thing. I don't agree with his theology or anything like that, but he does have an interesting point that he goes, that's one good reason to conclude we aren't dealing with alien visitors. Think about it. If aliens were really visiting the planet during the last 100 years, would their craft really evolve from propeller powered dirigibles to anti gravity? Wouldn't they have had the latter already? Because if you go back into the 30s and the 40s, around Roswell, there's actually reports of Zeppelin UFOs. Now we have these, fancy flying saucer thingies.
Yeah.
So,
Which, I mean, a lot of it is what I believe that a lot of these sightings are aircraft testing, and it's not like the military is going to be like, oh, yeah, that's our new bomber we're trying out. So, yeah, if other countries, this is what our military is developing, like, I do think a lot of it is, military testing and things like that, but people are seeing, and of course, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, totally. That was because if you look at these, UFO sightings and things from, the 80s and 90s and such, I mean, they look like B bombers, the B-52s, but yeah, so which I mean they do. They kind of look like spaceships if you've ever seen one.
yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of it I do think is aircraft testing, but I do think that there's probably people who have, whether it's aircraft or what. I mean, I know that there's, reports from people who were Navy pilots that have been like, yeah, I saw something weird. I don't know what that was, but they're not, it was just one of those things, and that seems to be kind of a common thing. But of course, you don't run tell everybody because then you sound like a crazy person. But there are more and more people talking about being like, yeah, I saw something weird. I don't know if that was an airplane or could have been an alien. Don't know. But yeah, like you were saying, I mean, and yeah, I think that because this group isn't closed off and insular and dogmatic with their beliefs, then I think that that it's very less likely to go, a doomsday cult UFO type religion. But if they start acting wild, it's definitely something to watch out for.
I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my sound. Did your batteries? I don't have batteries. Mic is on. Let's see. Why have I gone goofy? I'm gonna cap it through my cord again. Hmm. Very weird. I don't really have a volume control on my mic.
Because I can hear you just fine from here, is the thing.
Yeah, I hear you just fine as well. But
well, I don't want to make too many changes. But yeah, I think too. Like one of the things, well, with Mike Heiser's blog post, he pointed to an article called "How UFO Reports Change with the Technologies of the Time," and it was written by Greg Eghigian. Sorry if I butchered that name. I'll throw the link in show notes, obviously. But yeah, it's just like you said, they could be, testing things that we aren't aware of. But we have, it seems that their descriptions specifically are very, very Hollywoodized. Not only, there's like standard alien grays that, you would see in any Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
And like I said, back in the 30s and 40s, it was phantom zeppelins to what we now have are discs and lights in the sky. So it's just really bizarre. But yeah, and the thing is, what people might not realize too with the whole alien thing is that, according to some, George Adamski, who died in 1965, was actually considered one of the first contactees in the Western world. Basically of the modern era. And in the 30s, he founded the Royal Order of Tibet, whose teachings were based on his psychic channeling of Tibetan masters. He wrote three books that were fairly popular called Flying Saucers Have Landed, which he wrote in 53, Inside the Spaceships in 55, and Flying Saucers, Farewell in 1961. And he believed that he was visited by a being from the planet Venusan, not Vene, but Venu, in 1952. And basically, this eventually, I believe, after his death, led to the founding of the George Adamski Foundation, which some people might be familiar with that name. It's still active. And they currently still circulate his work and promote his views. And then basically, the George Adamski Foundation became the lead of the religiously oriented UFO groups that have emerged since basically 1950s. So it's not like this whole alien UFO thing is a recent, since like the 80s. It's actually much older than we think it is. And while Adamski was one of the first modern alien contactees, it was Kenneth Arnold, who in, I think, around 1944-45 ish, reported to have seen several flying saucers. And he's credited by some, not everybody, for the rise in what we now know as UFO religions. So,
Oh, and I made an error. It is not Carrie Callahan who does Project Camelot. It is Carrie Cassidy. I don't know why I kept calling her Callahan. I apologize to if there's a Carrie Callahan out there. It's Carrie Cassidy. But this woman has 28,000 followers on Twitter.
oh my god.
Yeah, like 28,000 because I was trying to look up, I was like, is it Carrie Callahan? I was like, does she do something else? But no, it's Carrie Cassidy. Um, she needs money, y'all. Don't give it to her. You should give it to us instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, she calls herself a documentary filmmaker, investigative reporter, getting the truth out one whistleblower at a time. But yeah, she has her channel, and I mean, I don't know how many of these followers are, actually donating, or, how many of these are people like us who are like, what is this crazy bitch doing? But she has, like, you know, guests, and she it seems like she has a good setup. I don't know if she's like independently wealthy or what her deal is, but yeah, yeah, it's Carrie Cassidy.
Yeah.
So
We might have to look into her. We'll have to
yeah,
find.
she has 28,000 followers. I thought she was French. Like that no one knew her. Like, I mean, I know that some people do, but I didn't expect her to have that many. I expected her to have maybe a few thousand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's rather bizarre. It's like, people don't think would have followers at all.
Yeah, have
Have these ridiculous numbers. It's like, oh wow. Some of them.
Yeah, it's like this group we're talking about, they have only like 50, dedicated members, but, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away that this group who, doesn't seem to be, being as, so far isn't problematic with their, things, their beliefs that they have 50 followers. Meanwhile, this woman who is, pretty anti Semitic and has some very problematic views has, almost 30,000 followers, but go figure.
Well, it's like some of the alt med people I follow. I mean, the one that's my primary, it's like, seriously, she has that many people following her. Now, I know quite a few of them are people like me, but it's like,
Yeah, that's the thing. I
wow.
don't know how many of these people, but also, like, anytime I mention it, people are like, oh, I haven't heard about that. I mean, except for, I think you're the only person, Beth, that I've talked to who knows about this group. So it's not necessarily that she's, I don't know how many of these are, people like us who are like, yeah, what's this woman up to? But I can't imagine, it's a, not even if it's half, that's 15,000 followers still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm still fiddling with my sound, so that's why I'm a little distracted. Trying to figure out what I might accidentally hit getting in and out of my chair. So that's the only thing I had open. But yeah, going back to the kind of backtracking a bit, going back to the initial definition of what the religious call or religious UFO called alien called is, it's like to expound on a little bit on that and just kind of touch on some of the other groups is that you know according to like a well UFO KOKL believes seems to believe that these beings are superior to the human race intellectually, scientifically, and spiritually. And I find that kind of interesting that all these people, not just UFO Keokela, but a lot of these groups think that from a spiritual standpoint that these ETs are much better than they are, which I find bizarre. But um, and they seem to think that these aliens' main concern is planet Earth, which touches on a point that Sam brought up way back in the beginning: is why the fuck would they care about planet Earth? I mean, we gotta seem quite backwards to these aliens, but yet they're interested in the outcome of a nuclear war or whatever. I just find that kind of uh, bizarre. But one of the things that uh, one of the founders of the UFO Keokelo group says is that these ETs have great virtues and morals. The only way to make contact with them is to practice Dhamma, which is part of their Buddhist teachings, at the highest level. Um, Loku's aliens have high tech knowledge and are physically present. Pluto's leader claimed that Buddha was the greatest human mind. So it's like, why elevate these aliens above yourself? That just, I mean, to me, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. Yeah, that is. I don't know how they get around that.
It's like, but yeah, I mean, who's to say any alien, not just ones that allegedly are higher technology? Maybe like if you remember First Contact, where
Hmm.
basically the Star Trek movie, where the guy does a homemade rocket and launches himself into space. The Vulcans saw it and they came down eventually, and that was the first contact with Vulcan. I mean, who's to say that isn't the aliens, with these ramshackle rockets? It's like, why are they better than we are? Then to go further into like overall is that a lot of these groups have elaborate soteriology, which is salvation message. Why I didn't put that, I don't know. Um, the groups also teach end times chief of which is the actual rival of the aliens. Now, they don't, the UFO KOKL group doesn't necessarily say it, at least from the way I read it, yeah, instead of preventing the war, it's after the war. It's like, why not come down before it and solve all our problems?
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, they're telling us, but there's a prophecy. And I'm like, well, why would they tell us?
Yeah.
If it's just, well, I guess they're trying to be reassuring, but I don't know, a nuclear apocalypse type situation, nuclear war isn't very reassuring to me.
Well, it's like one group. They're called Solar Light Retreat, and basically, like UFO Kayakala, they teach that um, the ETs will initiate a new heaven and a new earth. Why not prevent it?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes toward, but I can see that, the regeneration, rebirth kind of thing still jiving in with those beliefs. But still, like, yeah, like you said, I mean, I'm just like, can you just, like, I like to live. I don't want a new heaven and a new earth. Let's stay on this one. Let's work on that.
Yeah. Okay, now we supposedly have an echo. Why don't they
Uh,
make these controls so freaking tiny? Okay. Fiddling around with me. Um, yeah, another deeper dig is that um, central to a lot of these UFO religions is the belief that contact with the aliens is a way of salvation and improvement to assist the human race out of its present ignorance. And this again goes back to why not do it before. Um, Basically, healing is one of the main ritual practices. And I know in the one video, the guy that did the video, one of the followers of UFO Calcola said he could heal him, so he actually did it, and they filmed it. And all he did was like kind of touch the guy on the hands, I think, if I remember correctly.
mhm.
And he actually asked the interviewer whether he felt any different, and he's like, no, not really. But they believe that they can heal people. They can, or they can see your karma.
Mhm. Yeah, and I can again, if that becomes alternative medicine, then yeah, that's definitely going to be a problem. If
Oh,
it's like
go ahead.
if it's like go see the try to connect with this alien instead of seeking actual medical care, that's going to be
Yeah,
an
problematic.
issue. Yeah, but I think it's more, and so far from what I found, it doesn't seem like they're practicing any alternative medicine, or I'm sure that would have been one of the critics because, like you said, a lot of these, you know, countries, anybody who kind of
Strays.
travels away from mainstream Buddhism is kind of viewed with a little bit of, all right. I mean, not necessarily persecution, but, just
Right.
definitely raises eyebrows. And,
Yeah.
people have been trying to find ways to attack them. And I haven't seen any kind of, those kind of attacks made against this group. So hopefully they don't go in that direction. But, yeah, because that
Uh,
would be its own set of problems.
so Turpin says that okay, better now, no echo. So thank you, Turpin. You helped me find my echo problem. I know which button not to push anymore. It's only taken me how many episodes to figure that out? Well, the online tutorials aren't always necessarily very helpful for people like me who really are clueless. I mean, like, it took me just to even set this up back when we lost Google Hangout. I'm like, um, okay, I don't even know how to load it into the computer. I mean, other than the install. I'm like, so I actually had to find tutorials to tell me how to even do that I could understand. So yeah, this is. I mean, it's kind of sort of intuitive. It's better than XSplit was for me. I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
XSplit is bad, but it's just it wasn't an intuitive program where this one's a little bit more intuitive, but I still get confused really easy. But anyways, thank you, Turpin. Um, I had said earlier that it was 2025. They were predicting World War III is 2022.
Oh,
Yeah, and
well,
yeah, going back to the prevent our ignorance or uh, basically the message is that Pluto's aliens worry about something so devastating happening on Earth, such as a war or the environment, that it might impact their planet. Well, if they're from Pluto, the only thing I could think of that would impact Pluto would be if our planet blew up.
yeah, I think that might, from like a nuclear war, but yeah, and also, I wonder what they if they have any strong feelings on Pluto, if it's a planet or not. Because that was a hot debate for a while. So I wonder if they
Mhm.
have any strong feelings that way or another. But yeah, yeah, no. And
Well,
then there's the
that
thing
was
that
actually brought up too.
yeah, we still don't know that much about Pluto from when I was trying because I was like, why are they saying these aliens are from Pluto? Like that's a random, planet to me.
Right.
Um, but yeah, from what I could gather, from based off what we know, I mean, we've gotten some better imaging, basically from telescopes and things like that, NASA imaging. But some of it, especially on the hemisphere that's away from
Tidal
us, I
orbit,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah, it's still very low resolution images that we're able to get, that kind of thing. So maybe that plays some factor into it. That Pluto is still very mysterious
Could be.
to us.
It's like I said. I mean, like among all these different groups, I mean, where these aliens are from, there's no consistency. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like they're all over the map. Oh, well, star map.
Eh, yeah.
I mean, like I said, Pleiadians, Pluto, this Lo, I can't even think of the shortened
Oh
version.
yeah.
Yeah,
Draco.
yeah, Draco. Let's see, Orion. I mean, they're just all over, and
Kronos.
yeah, it's Chronos. That's a Greek god.
No, that's the Klingon
That's,
homeworld if you want Star Trek.
I was like, isn't that
Oh,
the dude from God of War, the video game?
yeah. See, and that's the thing. You have all. We just mentioned three different things that the name could apply to. But yeah, it's just like even like their how they impact our these people's thinking processes for for I can't think of a better word at the moment because I totally lost my train of thought. But they have advice about karma, reincarnation, greed, fear, and these are all concerns within Buddhism. And climate change, mutant diseases, coronavirus, uh, and any other catastrophe you can think of. So it's like they glom. I won't say they necessarily glom onto what's happening currently with world health issues or world politics or anything. It's just, but there's a lot of like as I said, the karma and the ring. That's all Buddhist stuff, and
Yeah.
I don't mean to make that sound like a bad thing. It's just how it came out.
Yeah. What it is.
Yeah.
But what's and I don't know as far as, I don't know anything about, Buddhism's connection to astrology or anything like that, but I do know that traditionally in astrology, Pluto is considered a regenerative and transformative planet, which I think fits into their belief of, that civilization's going to, basically there's going to be this horrible war, and then it's going to be basically a new civilization that emerges after that.
Hmm.
But I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if that plays into any kind of ideas of where these aliens are from. But because I know, like obviously, like the people who believe in these reptilian aliens, they're like, oh, they're from Draco, and I'm like, well, how convenient.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
It's
from
like,
the Dragon constellation. How
oh
fitting.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, going along the same line is like with these UFO religions, very few of them offer any speculations about origins of the universe as a whole.
Yeah.
but they have really elaborate theories of the origins of the human race and conditions
Yeah.
here on Earth. Like, for example, going back to aliens, human life on Earth was created by beings from another planet through their knowledge of DNA. Hint, hint. Um,
Mhm.
and we all know what that's really close to because it came out about the same time. It's very
Yeah.
similar to the view that was already popularized by the time the aliens were founded by Eric von Däniken in his book Chariots of the God in 1969. And it was around the same time that Sitchin's view of the Anunnaki and the 12th planet came out, which was in 1976. Sitchin, if you don't remember, attributed the creation of the ancient Sumerian culture to the Anunnaki, which he stated was a race of extraterrestrials from a planet beyond Neptune called Nibiru. And yes, I do mean the Nibiru that was supposed to be of Earth's demise in 2012. So yeah, I mean, you have
Nib's running late, man. Nib's running late.
yeah, way late. Well, not to sidetrack too much, but they're still saying Nibiru is gonna kill the planet. It's like, dude, y'all said that in 2012. It didn't happen then either. But it's like, how can it's like I baffle it how they can kind of self correct for their wrong prophecies. You know, it's like, oh shit, what's his name? Oh, can't think of it. I lost his name now, but yeah. Oh, I was
Nostradamus?
no, not Nostradamus. Um, recent. He just died like 5 years ago. Oh, what the hell was his name? Oh well. But yeah, I mean, there's also a mythology in Japan from the Pana wave, which is another religious group, um, which also might be rooted in Zechariah Sitchin's 12th Planet. And he wrote numerous sequels to that, by the way. And yes, I do have them all. Yeah, fun reads. But yeah, I mean, they don't know how the universe got here, but damn them aliens, they tinkered with our DNA, and that's how we're here. Okay. So, but they, as I said, the KOKL group doesn't seem to go that far. Hints of it if you read between the lines or try to read between the lines of what's been published. I would really love to get my hands on their so-called book, but I mean I've been looking and looking and I can't find a copy. So
It might be for a reason.
probably a good one too. um, yeah, but a lot of
when
the
like core group ideals are hard to find,
mm-hmm.
not
Usually
saying right
though,
away what they're about.
yeah. Well, I think what it is too is the book was originally published in Thailand, in Thai, and I don't think the
2,000 members though. 2,000 members. You'd think at least one
hmm
would be able to,
Well, I got my
you
hands
know.
on all the Raelian's original material, although it's on my uh, old computer, so I got to see if I can pull it up for that. But it's still
Okay.
available online, but I haven't found this one. I mean, some of the Raelian material is still you can get it off their website, but it's not the original because they have changed some things. Gee, imagine that. But yeah, the only thing that really stuck out with this group is that in classic monotheistic religions where, God basically takes the initiative to call prophets, it seems that it's the aliens that approach and, as they put it, a specially selected group of individuals and communicate to them. So, according to the KOKL group, there are like 5,000 chosen ones who believe, that the aliens have decided to deliver a helpful message to man. In general, I don't have a problem with that, but when you say, "Oh, a chosen few,"
Yeah, that's when I'm like,
yeah, that's when red flags for me go up. But one of the followers says that there's a galactic federation. It's like the United Nations on Earth, except it's between planets. There is a code 1117. Thus, the time 1117 is also sacred. It's a sign of duty, a sign of contact. Okay, secret codes. And that kind of for me throws off some red flags, but we're not going to be able to get into that because we got about 8 minutes left. So what are your thoughts on these
Yeah,
guys?
look at how time flew tonight.
Yeah, and I'm not even halfway through my notes. Oh, that's funny. Last week I wasn't sure if or last episode I wasn't sure if I'd have enough, and this week I of course have way too many, but a lot of it's repeat. And but what are your thoughts on these guys?
I mean, do I think that they are receiving messages from aliens from Pluto? No. But I don't think that, they don't seem to be out of all the different cults that cults, religions, belief systems that we've examined here, I'd say they definitely, rank on the less problematic to me right now, because it just seems like they're just gathering to like try and see if they can find aliens and meditate, and they're not, they don't have some kind of strict dogma where, or a central leader that they're kind of gathering around. So that's fine, but I mean there are problematic elements in it. Obviously, the apocalyptic prophecy, the chosen one language is a little, but but other than that, I mean, I think that it's harmless, but I definitely can see where, if this becomes your whole entire belief system and you hinge your entire life on this belief system, where it can go, badly. But I don't see them being like some kind of doomsday cult.
They are actually, according to some, considered a doomsday cult, but I think
I
they're
mean, in a way, I can see that because they think that
yeah,
there's going to be this big war, but I
right.
don't think they're not like, oh, we need to participate in the war, or we need to like,
Commit mass
kill
suicide to
ourselves,
yeah, commit mass suicide so we
murder.
get on Hellbop,
Yeah,
shit like
I'm
that.
not seeing any of that. And as far as like them taking over, them being like, oh, you have to leave your family, you have to, talk about the suppressive persons being very closed off from the outside world. I mean, they seem to be fairly open. And again, like, I mean, I just think that, yeah, they're just out there. Just, maybe I would like for them to stop, going in on this protected land, but
Yeah.
that'd be good because our Earth we need less, we need protected land. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Sammy,
Earth's
what are
not
your
great.
thoughts?
Well, they've been around since '97. Only 50 hardcore members. So established long before the internet could really bring the world together. So I'm betting these couple thousand are only in the last little while.
Yeah.
They had this long to cultivate more members
Hmm.
in a day and age where cults are definitely capable of doing so. I'm going to go with they're either really, really smart, hiding from everyone, or they're being really cautious because they see all these other actual fucked up groups and say, hey, you know what? We have a club of 50 people who all like this alien thing. Let's not fuck it up by making ourselves look crazy like the Scientologists. Let's just sort of take all of our shit off the internet.
Hmm.
Let's make it really hard for English speakers to get it. Let's make it really hard for. I could see that being a. You know what? We're just a club. We're just a club. 50 people's a club. That's not a.
Well, and I
That's not
think
something I
that
need to worry about.
I think that's a really good point because I do think from some of the accounts I've read that's actually how they think of themselves. They are Buddhists who happen to believe whatever they believe, and they're you know as I said in the beginning, I don't know if it's coincidence since the Vice article came out, or I don't even know what even tipped Vice off. I mean, they just came across, because I do follow fringy groups and cults and stuff like that, but, and I have for, for a long time. I've always been interested in cult beliefs. Not that I want to join one, although I was part of one. Well, sorta, if you consider Christianity a cult. But yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail with that one. So the only thing I got left is just for shits and giggles some of the fewer unknown groups. Well, maybe unknown. Do you want to try to tackle that? And I know we only got quote 4 minutes left, but it shouldn't take too long. I didn't deep dive into these guys. You guys game? Sam Morgan?
For the who now?
I have a few other UFO cults that people might not be aware of that are still floating around. Just,
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah. We can do a quick rundown.
Yeah. Well, one group I found which I thought was kind of interesting, they're called the Orden Fiat Lux, which is Latin for Let There Be Light. And they were founded actually in 1973 by Erica Bertschinger, who goes by the name Uriella. And basically, this is a group out of Germany, if I remember correctly, because I don't think I wrote that down anywhere. But they predicted the world would be devastated in the middle of 1998 by Nazi flying saucers and natural disasters. Obviously, that didn't happen. They also believed that friendly aliens would come to the rescue of the chosen few, and then you use them to resettle a
Hmm.
new paradise on Earth, very similar to the UFO-Kala group. Um, they have currently about 750 members, so they're still active, but um, as I said, they're out of Germany, so everything's in German, and my German has not improved any since I've been doing the Duolingo class. Although I haven't done it in over a month because I've been busy, so I didn't delve into them too deeply. Well, none of these groups I have, but then there's the Unarius, or I don't know if it's Unarius or Uarius Academy of Science. And for those familiar, they were one of the groups originally attached to the crystal skull named Max. They were founded in '54 by Ernest and Ruth Norman. And they, yeah, love this one. Most famous for proclaiming that Chinese people were descendants of Martians. Yeah. And this is what scares me with some of these groups. They also claim to be a scientific group and not a religious group that teaches its members about interdimensional physics, whatever the fuck that is, because I was like, I'm not diving into that one. And they assert this interdimensional physics can answer all questions about the universe and one's existence.
Hmm.
They believe the Earth will soon rejoin a coalition of planets that had broken up hundreds of thousands of years ago, and that this event will usher in a new age of prosperity. Although they predicted this would happen back in 2001. Yeah. Notice how they're not very accurate with their predictions. Now, this one, some of you might be familiar with. It's capital I, capital AM activity. Um, I think the AM is abbreviation for Ascended Masters. They're one of the original Ascended Master teaching groups, and they were founded, believe it or not, back in 1930 by Guy Ballard, who claimed to have met the legendary Saint Germain. Um, there's no super easy way of summarizing the overall beliefs without doing a major deep dive, which we may sometime because I like doing these fringy cult things. Um, but they consider themselves Christian, but with a twist. Through a process of self purification, the believers may attain the perfected conditions of the saints or become an ascended master when leaving their body, contrasted to the common concepts of ordinary death. And this group is still active. They actually have an active website. And there is much controversy that surrounds them. So I didn't want to get too deep because I know it would have led down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Um, we're all familiar with Scientology and Xeno, and I'm not going to go crazy here because God knows how many episodes we've done on Sci. Um, obviously, they're still very active in their beliefs and obviously fairly well known. They were founded in 53. Um, and the beliefs surrounding Xenu remained pretty secretive until 1972 when Robert Kaufman first revealed his own experience as an OT3 in his book Inside Scientology: How I Joined Scientology and Became Superhuman. Um, and that book is still available if you have bought $1,000, at least on Amazon. I went looking and I was like, yeah, I don't know if it's a legitimate seller or not, or if the book is actually worth that much. I would say it probably is. Um, it wasn't until 1985, the 1985 case from Lawrence Wollensheim, that the shit really hit the fan concerning Xenu. According to Hubbard, Xenu is the dictator of the Galactic Confederacy, who brought billions of his own people to Earth about 75 million years ago, stacked them around a volcano, and killed them off with a hydrogen bomb. Now, official Scientology scriptures, according to what I understand, hold that the Thetans, which are the immortal spirits of these aliens, attach themselves to humans, causing spiritual harm, hence the term going clear. And I highly suggest Leah Remini's series if you can find reruns on like Netflix or wherever they do that kind of stuff. So yeah, and then we talked about Kolob in the beginning, so we won't go over that. And last but not least is Heaven's Gate. And I know pretty much everybody's familiar with it. It was founded in '74 by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, who had an interest in alternative spiritual exploration, astrology, and biblical prophecy, which a lot of people aren't aware of. Basically, Heaven's Gate members believed the planet Earth would be recycled before 2027, and the only chance for their consciousness to survive was to leave their human bodies at an appointed time. Now, what a lot of people are not aware of is that initially the group was told that they would be transported with their bodies on board a spacecraft that would come to Earth and take the crew to the next level. This bit of belief was changed in 1985 when Bonnie Lou Nettles died of cancer, which went against everything they believed in. So the doctrine, so to speak, was changed, and it ultimately led to the mass suicide in 1997. Basically, the members had to give up all human-like characteristics such as their family, friends, sexuality, individuality, jobs, money, and possessions. This literally led to some of the men actually having themselves castrated surgically. Um, what's scary about the uh, Heaven's Gate, besides the fact I lost a friend to that group, and that's hence my interest in cults, more so than what it was before, is that these guys are heavily into ancient astronaut hypothesis. Um, and that's a whole nother ballgame that we're not going to get to because, like, we're already over time. But yeah, Applewhite was a dangerous motherfucker, and he caused a lot of families a lot of grief. So, and that is a brief synopsis of alien cults. Ending thoughts, my dears?
No, I think that pretty much does it for, especially for the Thai one. I think we did a pretty good summary.
I mean, they're an interesting group, and I do find some of these more, for lack of a better word, wacky beliefs. But I think, as we also highlighted too, is some of these beliefs can lead to dangerous consequences. Um, you know, yeah, they're very disparate, but the ramifications of some of these groups are dangerous. I mean, Scientology is one, obviously Heaven's Gate, and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that was the attempt on UFO cults. And I will either later tonight or tomorrow throw some articles that I came across that I thought were interesting. I'll throw that in the show notes, and I'll post it in the group page as well. But with that, I will bid you adieu. But Sammy, where can we find you?
It's the same name I'm posting with in the comments there, Zaku Girl. You can find me on YouTube there.
Excellent. And Miss Morgan, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mostring. That's Mostring. That's probably the easiest way to find me.
And best way to find me is on Twitter, Dune998. That connects to my blog, Havoc and Chaos. And I'm still posting, but not as often as I would like. Work is so much fun. And then you can also find me on Facebook under Beth A. Hambridge. And don't forget, we also have a fan page and a group page for Beyond the Trailer Park, so you can hit us up there if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. And hopefully I have the sound issue fixed for next time. So with that, I'm going to attempt to, oops, wait a minute, where am I? Here we are. Attempt to close us out. Come here. With the Humanist Creed, and Sam and Morgan, don't sign off right away. I got a question for you guys. So
All
with
right.
that, y'all have a good night, and we will see you in 2 weeks, hopefully.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.